Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here. Oh, good God. It is like January 20th, and this might be the first beer review I've done this calendar year. I could be wrong. There might have been one. But yeah, I haven't been reviewing a ton. I have a little bit of backlog, so I figured I'd take some time off. But it was out and about today, and I saw a beer that intrigued me. Kane. Brewing Company. Yeah, this is their wet hop whole leaf magic. So it's a IPA with whole leaf hops. I shouldn't say wet hopped. I say wet hop when it's whole leaf hop, but I mean, we're so far away from hop harvest, they could just be calling it a whole leaf hop beer as opposed to wet hop, because it might not be wet anymore. Anyway, it's been a while since I've done a Kane beer review, and I figured might as well dive into it, and I'll give it a pour and we'll talk about it. So I picked it up and I was like, well, what hops are they using? You know, it's a whole leaf hop, and I looked and they call it Krush hops, and I was like, I don't know if I know that Krush. I'm like, it sounds familiar, but then I looked on their website and it said Krush, and then it said formerly HBC, so hop, what is it, hop, what's HBC stand for? Hop Breeding Company, I believe. It's somebody that works with Yakima. And they're, let me tilt my camera down a little bit. It was HBC-586, I believe. It might be 568 or something like that. Dyslexia coming through. Anyway, I was like, I've had that. I couldn't tell you where I've had it before, but I know I've had it before. And lo and behold, I type in the old HBC number, and what do I see? Like, 800 billion Hop Butcher beers have been made with this hop, so that kind of has me a little bit excited. You know, Hop Butcher don't mess around with hops, and they've used this before it even got that name Krush, so I'm super excited to dive into it. It's actually one of the more prettier Kane cans that I've seen. You know, simple hop leaves on the background kind of makes sense. That's why it caught my eye when I saw it on the shelf. And as far as dating goes, this was canned about 3 weeks ago. So yeah. Here we go. So you've got a whole leaf hop. I'll probably say wet hopped a couple times, even though that probably won't be wrong. And give it a whirl. Let's see what we got going on. It does have that look of a whole leaf hop beer. I mean, typically if I were to crack a hazy IPA and look at this, I'd be like, it's a skosh darker than what I want it to be. At least when it comes to typically what like S tier, upper echelon kind of haze looks like. When you're talking about either wet hopped or whole leaf hop beers, they tend to be a bit darker. Don't know if that has to do with the, the oils or what it is inside the hop leaves, but they tend to skew a little bit lighter. But it is definitely a nice, softer kind of color. Not super turbid hazy, but definitely has that hazy game going on with that pinky finger of just barely off-white head to it. So I'd say it looks like orange marmalade-y to a certain extent as far as looks go. Let's even get a nose. It's bursting, actually, from a distance. Man, that smells really, really, really good. Like, it's all this, like, a lot of tropical fruit in a candied kind of marmalade-y version. Maybe that's a little bit of, suggestiveness since I just mentioned that, but it has this kind of, like, jammy, and by jammy I mean marmalade-y, not necessarily jammy in a fruity sense, but the way the hop's going to come off, it comes off as that jammy kind of tropical fruitiness. We're leaning a lot of mango, passion fruit, guava kind of vibes to it. There's still a citrus tone to it, a little bit of stone fruit, but it really is this kind of marmalade-y, jammy version of a kind of tropical fruit that is just bursting at the seams. There's a little bit of almost like unkept lawny greeniness to it. Again, that could be your whole leaf at play there. But as far as the beer goes, it's got a beautiful sweetness to it, nothing too elevated. I believe it's a double IPA, right? 7.5. We're teetering on a scale there, but it has this nice kind of softness to it while I start breaking everything in my studio here, but at the same time a very vibrant richness when it comes to the hop. And like I said, ultra tropical leaning, but again with that little bit of added sweetness from the malt bill and whatnot, kind of leading you into that kind of just little jammy marmalade-y thing. Listen, you talked to me 10 years ago, I used the word marmalade, I want to punch myself in my own face, but I think it makes sense. And it comes off to me like a hyper, mixture of old school and new school. So you're getting a lot of these kind of old school, new school vibes from your Headies and your Sips of the world, but there's something a little bit more brighter to it, while at the same time, you have this kind of old school of that kind of whole leaf hop, which is, again, no fun to play with. So the fact that they're even doing it, I think it's a seasonal rotational for them. And then just brings this nice kind of bright sweetness that you get, the shaved edge, slightly confectionery, but not lactose added kind of sweetness you tend to get from really well done new school kind of hazy IPA. So it definitely has all the bits and pieces of a really nice, well done hazy, but you can tell there's something a bit different about it, and I believe it's that whole leaf is bringing it that little bit of goodness to the game, or decent amount of goodness. Let's just dive right in. Cheers, y'all. Yeah, man. Man, this is a hop showcase. But in the sense that it's such a cool kind of... It's a cool mixture because it's giving you so much new school in a hop, but it's giving you so much old school kind of experience and deft touch to it from that whole leafness. Not many people do that. Again, it's very much a pain in the ass, but you can tell it's coming through in the taste. You tell it's producing something for the beer that you don't typically get from just like hop pellets or cryo this, cryo that, Kiwi, whatever. So first off, a beautiful mouthfeel to it. Has this kind of like lushness to it. At the same time, it's very, very drinkable. It's not like super turbid. Again, we kind of tell that from the look of the beer from our first look. But once you get into the sip, it still has this nice, full, satiny softness, richness to it that really kind of makes it like super fun to drink. On the flip side of things, those whole leaf hops are definitely coming through as far as an aggressiveness. It's the best way I could describe it. And that there's almost like a little bit of a stinging. Something you would kind of attribute to more hop pellet, but I think it's more of a hop oil thing here. Something that you typically don't get from a lot of that hefty, cryo hop pellet vibe that adds this little bit of like, again, it's not an oiliness that's a flabbiness or anything like that. It just has this kind of richness to it. If you've ever had any of those kind of really whole leaf hop or hop oil based kind of beers, Lagunitas makes one, I believe. A bunch of breweries make them. There are very few and far between. So what you end up having here is this really kind of beautiful array of tropical fruits that we talked about on the aromatics, following through in the taste. It stops a little bit short of being that sweet jaminess that I talked about in the nose, but it definitely follows through with those big bursting, tropical fruits first, citrus and stone fruits a very, very distant second and third. But then you have that kind of almost West Coasty vibe. It's not piney. It's not overtly resinous, even though I'd say it has a touch of that going on in it. It just adds that bit of greenness you can only get from the whole leaf hop, which mimics a bit of West Coast vibes to it. So as a whole, if you were to give this to me blind, do I go, oh, this is a whole leaf or a wet hop beer? Maybe I get there. I would say it's like one of those new school kind of West Coast, East Coast, New England style West Coast IPAs that tend to be quite the rage nowadays. Now, like I said, Kane's been making this one, I think, over the years with different hops in each iteration. So it's not something new to them. I don't remember having this before. I might have. But this is delicious. I think this would very much appeal to the old school crowd, along with the new school crowd. Sure, you'll have some detractors from that. New school crowd, it's not ultra juice. There's a little bit of bittering here. There might be a little bit of I wish it was more like, Treehouse, whatever. But even though they make all kinds of different beer now, so I shouldn't really pigeonhole them in that. Whereas you have the old school detractors be like, I like it, it's good hop presence, but it's a hazy, blah, blah, blah. I think this actually would appeal to a good swath, a good bulk of that group on both sides of things. It's delicious. It's delicious. Pissed I didn't look up the price point on this. The place that I go to get most of my beer nowadays, they have like a little they have a gigantic cooler actually. And I've told this story before in previous reviews, but they have like an entrance to the cooler in the front where, you could walk in. There's a big sign, employees only, do not enter. But that's like a ruse. They're like, one guy's like, you can go in there whenever you want. There's a whole bunch of different beer in there. We just don't want people just going in there. So that's where I found this. It wasn't presented up front. It was one of those ones that sit in the back. I don't know if it's limited distribution or anything like that. But it's one of those beers where it's like, I don't know if I'd pick it up if it was out in the front of the cooler, just because I'd be scanning. I'd be like, oh, there's Kane, there's this. And I go back there and be like, oh, I almost feel like the stuff back there has a little bit of extra cachet or something about it. And just like I said, the can art, super simple, but very catching. And honestly, anytime I see anything with whole leaf hops or wet hops, I kind of have to buy it. It's kind of like a little bit of, what do they call that? A little something. special something for me. And I am pumped that I bought this. 4-packs, that's how we roll here in the States, at least here in Jersey and the surrounding tri-state area. Rarely do you see singles, and if you do, you see them on an extreme markup. So to get something like this from a local brewery here in New Jersey and have it express it this way and have it bring those bits and pieces of the game that you typically don't get from just a hop pellet based beer, I'm a fan, man. This is going to go up on the shelf for best of the year, I believe, because this is just hot damn delicious goodness. And I'm pumped to drink more of these. Yeah, 4 of them. See how long they last. So there you go. Whole Leaf Magic with Krush hops, formerly HBC-586 or 568, whichever one that is, from Kane Brewing. There you go. Is it one of the better IPAs that I've had as of late? Yes. Mount Rushmore status? Yes. Especially if you get, I mean, it is in general, but if you kind of even delineate it further into the whole leaf / wet hop variety, it's leading that clubhouse. Value and availability, I actually don't know what I paid. I just grabbed it and bought it with a couple other things. Probably close to $20 a 4. That's my guess. Maybe 18, 17 or price points. Usually not too poopy with Kane, but we'll, tis what it is, and leave you with, if you like what we like this. Again, pretty much what I said. I mean, if you watch the whole review, you'll know if you like it or not. But if you like well-made beer, whether you be a new school Hazebro hop thought, or you're an old school brewer or home brewer or beer junkie that kind of eschews a little bit of the new school stuff, I think both of those people will enjoy this beer, especially if you dig on the hops and not in just a strictly one note kind of way a lot of New England beers tend to be. You will dig this. So there you go. Review in the books. Hopefully you enjoyed. Massive Beers. You can check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massif, podcasting stuff. Kane Brewing. Have you been to the brewery? Have you had their beers? Have you had this beer? I'm very curious if you've had this. If you've had previous versions with different hops, let me know all your thoughts down below. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of a whole leaf magic right now. Hope we'll see you next time. Cheers, though.